Let's go. A fork. And, oh, now it's stuck. What happened? A wheel and glasses. These are all tools invented to make our lives simpler and more efficient. But we no longer obsess over the magic of forks or marvel at wheels, although we still might search for better glasses. But nothing captures our attention more than our latest and greatest tool, our constant companion, the omnipresent power in our hands, our smartphone. It is increasingly the filter through which we relate to our world. It's our pen, our paper, and our publisher. It's our camera and our broadcasting device, our television, as well as our alarm clock. Whether you're on Android or iOS, whether you're a Samsung, Nokia, or Apple person, our devices keep us connected. They give us a sense of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. But what are the implications of these gadgets that we've placed in the hands of our children at earlier and earlier ages and in more countries, where we post our status updates and our selfies for all to see? It was designed to serve us, and yet we often end up serving it, answering to the steady stream of feeds that demand our attention and the text messages that prompt us to respond.
Pause button for a second. Everyone should be able to see Craig's screen. So, Alan, I saw that. I know Jay had a problem. I'm not sure what the secret is, but you should be able to, once you've opened up, if you've called in via computer, you should be able to see the screen. But I'm not sure what else to say beyond that. Unless, Jay, can you give a quick word of advice, Jay?
Video participants.
I had the camera on full screen. That's why I could not see his slide. It was hiding the slide. I got it.
Okay, so we're good to go. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Technical issues. Back to you, Craig. You're on.
Worries. Even in sleep mode, it always seems to be buzzing and sort of beckoning. It's like this phantom alarm ringing in our pockets at all times. We check it as a reflex action before, after, and often during class and in meetings. And we expect somebody to check in and validate us. So how should we think about this disruptive technology? Is it drawing us together or separating us from the people beside us? As a parent, I'm constantly dealing with this as a reality. How is it affecting the spiritual lives of our teens and ourselves? Are we training ourselves to look down rather than up and to ignore our surroundings, even those closest to us? Over 50 years ago, Daniel Borstein said, technology is so much fun that we can drown in our technology. The fog of information can drive out knowledge. And if you ask students, they're not sure that their smartphones are actually making them more intelligent. Of course, it's frustrating for us as teachers, and I don't know about you as a parent, but my interactions with my kids are increasingly of the electronic variety. Of course, for pastors and ministers, it's an active competition, even to the Almighty. We're rarely silent and rarely focused. I think the rarest thing that we can offer, both to each other and to God, is our undivided attention. We're swamped by information. Mitchell Kapoor says getting information off the internet is like taking a drink from a fire hydrant. And if you look at any of the stats about the sheer amount of data that passes through us on a given day, right? Look at this. The average worker spends 28% of our work week managing emails. I mean, I don't know about you. That's not who I feel like God necessarily created me to be. So we have this sense that we're drowning in this digital deluge of bits and bytes. I don't know about you, but do you ever find yourself shutting down and feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, almost too connected by information overload? T.S. Eliot, a half-century ago, as a great poet, said, "Where is the life that we've lost in living? Where is the wisdom that we have lost in knowledge? And where is the knowledge that we've lost in information. A timely quote from days gone by. I wrote this book to push the pause button in my own life. I took the time to reflect upon what our constant connection means, in our relationships, and especially in our spiritual lives. The title iGods, it refers to several things. First and foremost, it refers to the tech titans, the mostly men who run the industry, as well as the companies that dominate our online activity. So the book is a study of these things. And the creators of these technologies, they now battle for our attention and our dollars. I love this. I found this. It kind of shows how they're battling for global domination, right? It's Amazonia versus Appalachia, trying to break through the fortress of Facebook and battling to rule Google Earth. It occurs to me that do we center our lives around these technologies a bit too much? Do our devices feel irreplaceable and essential? Because if we consider them kind of life-giving forces, then they are becoming idols that we feel like we can't do without. Of course, consider the passion that greets each new edition of the iPhone. Newsweek said, in iPhones we trust. And they said technology has become a kind of religion. Everybody clamoring to get the latest tablet. Of course, Steve Jobs has become a bit of a high priest of the technology industry, the exemplar of what it means to be an iGod. Of course, he didn't start out that way. Jobs began with a certain amount of idealism to create beautiful computers to make us more creative. And I don't know about you, but I think Apple's products have always been beautiful, and they're to be commended for putting aesthetics into their machines and encouraging desktop publishing and great design and filmmaking and music. Johnny Ive, who designed, the iPhone, the iPod, I think he's the real genius at Apple, making elegant and simple products that, allow our fingers to swipe across the screen. And but there's still that tendency that this object can lead to obsession over something that is merely a product or a tool. And these tools created to unleash our creativity may wind up being too tempting for us to resist. From the beginning, Steve Jobs tempted us, right? Putting these shiny products before us. And they have certainly become the apple of our eye. Apple revived the music industry by creating a beautiful walled garden on iTunes where we could feel good about buying music again. But don't try to move that music beyond the Apple walls. The products keep us inside Apple's very well-designed, well-manicured garden. It's a brilliant and profitable strategy that others have followed. Maybe even diabolically brilliant, depending on how you feel about Steve Jobs. Of course, kids are getting turned on to Apple's product at earlier ages. When the iPad came into our house, my son quickly absconded with it, and I have rarely seen it since then. I wonder where the next generation will place their faith. Will they bow down to this new God that's omniscient, all-knowing, always on, always there for you? You can call anytime, and Siri will answer. Of course, the stats show how kids are getting their devices at younger ages and stages. This is how they've gone up just between 2005 and 2009. Off the charts, the anticipation amongst kids when they grow up, when they mature. This is like the new age of accountability when they have their own phone. Where will all this lead? When every child has a pocket telephone, camera, newspaper, and computer in their pocket, how should we as pastors and ministers and educators and leaders respond? What are the social and theological implications of such intense attachment? These are kind of some funny things. How do we feel if we misplace our phone 73% of the people get panicked, 14% get desperate, 7% get sick, and a small percentage actually get relieved when they get some space from what they might consider my precious, the I precious that dominates one ring to rule them all. In my research, I came across Sherry Turkle, whose book Alone Together explores technology. She's a psychologist at MIT, so she's had a front row seat to the technological revolution and was a very early supporter of the innovations. And she's changed her tune as she's done more research. She says these days, insecure in our relationships and anxious about intimacy, we look to technology for ways to be in relationships and protect ourselves from them at the same time. We fear the risks and disappointments of relationships with our fellow humans. We expect more from technology and less from each other. Our networked life allows us to hide from each other even as we are tethered to each other. We'd rather text than talk. I don't know about your teenagers, but that describes the life in my house. And as a professor at Pepperdine, I've seen how stressed out our hyper-connected teens can be. And it made me think of Jesus when he saw the crowds in his day. He had compassion on them because he saw them as harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. That verse seems more true than ever. What does it mean to belong to a community where it's easier to hide behind technology and let our posts do the talking? I began my research by asking a few key questions, like, what is our relationship to technology? Have we thought about that? What questions or concerns do we have, as parents and as people? And then theologically, I want to know, what does God think about technology? What does the Bible have to say? And do you have a theology of technology? I hadn't really ever heard that sermon, so I felt like I needed to write this book just to educate myself, to figure out how I wanted to respond. Here's a few of the things that I discovered as I went all the way back to Genesis. To some degree, God is the original technologist. You think of Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, portraying God as creator. You see him separating light from darkness, and in another panel, dividing land from sea. God, in a sense, is engineering the elements, keeping chaos at bay, holding back the flood. Technology at its best can make our lives less chaotic and can protect us from harm. In Genesis, we read about how God created, right? But it's a sense of giving shape to void, of bringing order to the chaos that was over the seas. And that's what technology does. It bends nature to our purpose. It turns a river into power, or the sun's rays into electricity. So what about us? Of course, God blessed us with the ability to engineer, to sort things out, and to organize things. You may not think of God as a technologist or an engineer. Genesis describes us as coming from the earth, or in a sense, forged from the dust. And we're comfortable calling God a sculptor or a potter, where we are the clay. When it came time to create a suitable companion, God reached into Adam's side and pulled out a rib. And of course, thus was born the wondrous Eve. What kind of act is this comparable today? Would we call God a divine surgeon, reaching inside to create? If we're comfortable calling God a potter or a surgeon, why wouldn't we call him a technologist or an engineer? What was God's original calling to us? Any Hebrew readers out there, right? Anybody who can read Hebrew? This is Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. What's it say? Be fruitful and multiply. And I believe this is what Steve Jobs and Apple tapped into, unleashing our potential as designers and builders, artists and storytellers. And how have we done on this calling? I would say we've been remarkably productive and fertile across the centuries, in every era, in every culture. In fact, we may have been too fertile in some cases, multiplying without measuring the implications, and overlooking a key part of our calling in Genesis. Yes, we are to be fruitful and multiply, but we are also to replenish the earth. Not just subdue and dominate it, but give back, replenish, replant. What happens when we ignore God's calling? Well, bad things happen. And yet, even when Adam and Eve were cast out of Eden, God provided them with cover, early technology, with clothing to comfort them, and the tools to work the earth. You see it here in this old stained glass window. Adam with the tool in his hand, Eve with a loom for weaving. Of course, we've been working with these tools ever since, being fruitful and multiplying. So I have to say, first and foremost, the technology is a God-given gift. It's a consolation and a comfort, even amidst sin. So what does Jesus think about technology? If you wanted to know if he is an Apple or a PC, this artist answered that question. I think my second point that I really want to consider is where's Christ in all this? Is this what we mean when we sing a song like he's got the whole world in his hands, the power that we hold? And the question of what would Jesus tweet may seem like a joke, yet how much of Jesus' wisdom could be reduced to sharp punchlines or memorable beatitudes? Think about the 140 character blasts of wisdom that are contained in the Bible. We only know a little about Jesus' upbringing. The Bible says Joseph was a carpenter. Anybody know what the Greek word for carpenter is? We assume that Jesus grew up in a wood shop surrounded by tools. But that Greek translation for carpenter, that word is actually tekton. That's the same root of where we get the word techne, which is the root of technology. Perhaps we should think of Jesus differently. Think about him maybe as a builder. Think of him as a mason. Think about how many different times he refers to building metaphors in his discussions about how he might have constructed things. Maybe we even can think of Jesus as a techie. Would Jesus be found in the back of the sanctuary rather than in front? Maybe hanging with the tech crew, making others look good. My third point. People of faith have always been on the forefront of technology. You see it in architecture, in massive building projects, in remarkable engineering, cutting-edge technologies in their day. You see it in art, like stained glass, a very sophisticated technology that had to be developed. You saw it, Christians, in music, incorporating the latest, loudest technology, like pipe organs. And of course, what about mechanical devices, like the mechanical clock? Who invented watches? Monks, trying to keep track of when to work and when to play. When to work and when to pray. Also when to play as well, but mostly work and mostly prayer. Their life was organized around praying the hours at set times every day. Of course, they also perfected vinoculture, handing down technologies for making the world's finest wines, but that is a different talk. Perhaps it is not so strange that churches and ministries are some of the most enthusiastic and early adopters of technologies for worship and communicating the gospel. So I come back to these questions. Is technology a blessing or a curse? Is it a hope to embrace or a temptation to avoid? What do you think? I would say the answer is Yes. Yes. It is both those things at different times, depending on whose hands that technology may reside. Technology, has led to medical breakthroughs like gene therapy, and yet it's also led to the discovery of the atom bomb. We have doctors saving lives with medicine, and we have bombs that take lives. How much faith should be placed in technology? What are the core values behind the iGods? I'd say their values are smaller, faster, and more efficient. How do those things square with biblical faith? Smaller may be better, but does faster make us more patient? Are we more loving when we have this device in our hands, or are we even more demanding, even more harassed and harried? Technology can offer something akin to a religious experience. The ability to tap into all the knowledge gathered on the internet. It can be a heady experience, but we can get a little too attached. We might substitute new tablets for the ancient truths of the Ten Commandments. Of course, this is where we gather now. People flock in New York City to this cathedral built to honor technology. While we admire the products, do we necessarily admire the person? His record as a technologist is secure, but as a boss, as someone giving to others, it is a decidedly mixed bag. Of course, who are we to judge? Maybe there will be tablets in heaven. I don't know. What does this mean for us? What do we do with this computing power at our fingertips? I found this rather remarkable picture. This is scientists from the Rand Corporation, 1947, and they were projecting what a home computer might look like in 2004. Have things gotten smaller? Absolutely. Last I checked, you don't need a large steering wheel to steer your computer. They didn't anticipate the power of a mouse. And so computing speeds have gone far faster than everybody would imagine. So what are we doing with this power, with this capacity, with this possibility? If someone from the 50s suddenly appeared today, what would be the most difficult thing to explain to them? I possess a device in my pocket that's capable of accessing the entirety of information known to man, and I use it to look at pictures of cats and get in arguments with strangers. Of course, who doesn't love a pretty picture of an LOL cat? Sup, bro? Grumpy Cat, of course, is my personal favorite. We all love Grumpy Cat. What does God think about technology? I'll conclude with two stories from Genesis. Noah. Whether we're talking about the sunny Sunday school version or the darker recent movie. In each case, Noah is called to build an ark to exacting specifications. And for what purpose? Why did God say to build an ark? It was meant to preserve humanity and our biodiversity. Technology in the story of Noah is a life-saving gift. What happens after the story of Noah? Next story in Genesis, we shift to Babel, to Nimrod, and the construction of a tower. Of course, there are plenty of ruins around the world suggesting that this was a practice, a common practice in the ancient world. Huge building projects to glorify a ruler and magnify their kingdom and their name. At Babel, they said, let us build a platform to reach the heavens. And technology can become the ultimate hubris and folly, like the Tower of Babel, a tribute to human striving and futility. Is technology a life-saving art or a presumptuous folly? The answer is yes. Yes, yes, yes. What question do we need to ask ourselves so that we don't fall into this temptation? How do those technologies shape our lives? Do they make us more fruitful? What do you think? Do they make us more fruitful? I would say yes. Sometimes we become far more efficient with our time, our ability to transcend space, our ability to broadcast to others. But what temptations do they bring? What do we call Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? They are social media platforms to build our brand and expand our influence. Where have we heard about the danger of platforms designed to elevate ourselves? Perhaps the key question to consider when we wrestle with technology and these possibilities is really who or what is being elevated by our technological devices. Are the iGods encouraging us to think of ourselves more highly and more often than we ought? Consider this quotation from C.S. Lewis. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. So much wisdom contained in this quotation, so apt for our time where we are driven by our apps. So what? So what? How does all this apply to us? This perhaps is the new measure of our faithfulness, of our attention. It's the ultimate sign of respect to our families and our friends, our parishioners, and our God when we are fully present, looking up instead of down, face to face instead of screen to screen. What does digital discipleship mean in the 21st century? It's a concept that I think we're still trying to grasp. How to love and care for each other, online and offline. What is the goal of our connectivity? This information gathering that nearly drowns us. What do we seek in our updates? And is our phone making us more kind and compassionate? Amidst all the info we receive, how do we discern what matters and what's important? I have a quote from Clifford Stoll, an anthropologist, who says, "We must realize that data is not information. Information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not understanding. And understanding is not wisdom." We have so much data that flows through our phones and info that arrives in our feeds. And we may know more than our parents, but wisdom remains the elusive goal that takes time, maybe even a lifetime, to acquire. Proverbs says that by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established, and through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. Wisdom is the foundation that undergirds us, a beautiful treasure worth seeking out. I'll conclude with a few questions, just personal questions. Do you feel stressed out, distracted, unfocused, answering the beckon of the electronic call? In Genesis, God, the technologist, Jesus, the tecton, rested, took a break, maybe even unplugged. Perhaps we need to recover the importance of an electronic Sabbath. There's a little cartoon to conclude. I finally figured out how to manage my incoming data so that I'm not overwhelmed by information overload. Oh, cool. Are you using decision support software or some kind of coherent organizational environment? Nope. There's a little off button here. Every device still has a switch, the ability to turn it off and leave it behind, to take a break. So I might suggest that we may need to power down in order to power up. Thanks for the time. Thanks for attending.
Benjamin.
Good words, very good words. Really appreciated the thought, and it's I don't know if you were watching or not, but the comments chat session over here was just really blowing up, and there was a lot of comments and a lot of discussion going on. So, unfortunately, those who are joining in who are not on the stream, who are joining in, actually, I think everybody. There's one joining on mobile, but it looks like everybody is on the PC, so it looks like everybody can participate in that, which is great. I'm going to go ahead. There were two questions, three questions, I think, that came up for you, Craig. So sure. I'm going to go ahead and read those. Andrew Flynn asked, based on your last comment, which was a while ago, do you think that technology improves the human condition? And he said, I mean deeply at heart, not just doing good.
I think it definitely increases our what should we say, our ability to provide for each other. It allows us to pool our information. It allows us to lead healthier lives. It allows us to lead longer lives. You know, if any of us went and, spent time with, King Henry VIII in England, we would realize that we actually have more information, more knowledge, better diets, more access to health and long life than he ever did. So on the whole, technology has made life far greater. Does it change the human condition or capacity for sin? Absolutely not. And I think I wrote the book because I find that we have placed so much faith in technology that a lot of people, I think, have substituted it for God. And in a sense believe that, we, in a sense, are masters of our own fate, that we control our own future, and that the future is boundlessly bright. But when you look at something like Second World War, the atomic bomb, even a film like, all the various films like Terminator, they have a very different version of the future and where technology might be taken.
Okay. I'm thinking that the other question may have been more for the context of the chat. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is say, if you do have a question for Craig, go ahead and type it in the chat specifically saying question for Craig, and that way I can discern which of them is for him specifically and which ones are not. But there is a lot of good conversation going on.
And Benjamin, I'll just add that if somebody wants to just unmute themselves, you can just we'll just open up the floor as well.
Okay, there you go. There you have it. You are allowed to unmute yourself.
The power is in your hands.
Okay, well, it looks like we do have another one here. Bex has said, do we assume that technology is something problematic? Do we assume the screen is instead of rather than in the mix augmenting? Bex, I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly, and what about those who find that tech allows them to hear, read, etc., and be present at services that they can't physically be at? I feel like you'd answered that, but go ahead and see what you can say to that.
Well, I think it's that positive and negative. It's that possibility, right? So the ability to broadcast, to share the gospel, something like Life Church TV can reach, obviously millions of people in amazing ways. But I'm not sure that I'm convinced that virtual communion is going to work in the future. I'm not sure self-baptism is the way to go, where we anoint ourselves in the privacy of our own homes. So there's a certain physicality to our faith, whether it's the bread and wine or whether it's, the water of absolution of baptism. these elements are physical and they're meant to be shared together rather than self-administered.
Agreed.
I have a comment on that. This is
Go ahead, Alan. Elaine. Alan.
there's a danger that we're now even pushing even more forward the impression that church is a spectator sport. So I totally agree, and I totally push towards making the church services available for those that are not able to attend. But they not attend. And then, like Craig just mentioned, there's no way you can do a self-baptism and communion by yourself. All those small church home churches work well.
Oh, Alan, it's weird. I don't know why. You're like a sine wave. You're in and out. So we're getting like 60% of your question. Can you, Alan, just do like a one-sentence question?
That facilitates the concept that Christianity is a spectator sport. There's a need to have support for people that can't attend your service, and we do that in our church. However, it's making it.
Oh, Craig, man, I don't know if you got that.
I think I got the gist. I mean, I think the gist is that we'll just say the individualized phone and the fact that we always have a screen with us has made us into perhaps believe that there's passive observing passes for, attendance or activity. It's almost the same temptation, I think, that happens with Facebook, where it's enough just to like your friend's post, like, I need prayer. Like, okay, well, maybe they need more than a like push. Maybe they need you to actually go to their house. Maybe they need someone to sit with them. Maybe they need someone to lay hands on them. Maybe they need someone to bring them a cup of soup. So I guess I believe we have a physical faith, and that in a world that's becoming increasingly virtual or impersonal, that we could be the last people who actually believe in the importance of the body, of actually laying on hands, of physical presence. And that is something you're going to have a hard time doing on your own.
Very good. And actually, Benjamin, Melissa had a question first, even before Bex, but it just came to me privately. Can you ask her question?
Yeah. I'm not really sure how to pronounce the last name. Madeline Langel.
Madeline Langel, yep.
Langel?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And others speak of the act of creation as being cosmos in chaos. Technology can certainly create order and cosmos. Do you think there is good in pursuing technological advancements, not for the sake of order or human improvement, but simply for its own sake?
Yes, absolutely. It's clear that God wouldn't have given us this capacity to think and dream and create if He didn't expect us to act on it. In a sense, it's interesting when God rested on that seventh day, in a sense, the baton, I think, passed to us. It's kind of like, okay, now what are you going to do with this sandbox of possibilities that I've given to you? And I think that question is still presented to us. What are you going to do with your brain? What are you going to do with your imagination? What are you going to do with your creativity? What are you going to build? What are you going to engineer? What are you going to follow in the footsteps of Jesus in creating? What kind of tecton will you be? So every time we do something, whether it's writing a play or writing code, it is a creative act.
And Benjamin, I'm going to read this one because I found this one back earlier. I missed it. How do we move from tech as broadcast to interaction? Have several debates regarding online communion has been done via radio for many years, trying to understand what the difference is with online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good question. I think where churches and ministries are challenged is that we're used to controlling the message, and basically, working in the old media world, which is one, broadcasting to many. So you control the message and you decide how it's disseminated and how people, get it. In the new version, you don't control the broadcast channels anymore. It's no longer one to many, it's many to many, or maybe one to one, or one to many. And so we're used to, in a sense, being able to corral and contain the message. And now, in this, it's almost like some might call it Babel, but others could say it's a little bit like Pentecost, where everybody has the ability to speak in their own tongue, in their own language, to any corner of the world at any time. And this is a major adjustment for the church that has been used to saying, well, this is orthodoxy, or this is the gospel. Now you can't really control it or contain it, because it's more like brush fire that is spreading without our necessarily even knowing about it.
Awesome. And there's another one up there from Bex, Benjamin. I don't know if you see that.
I think I got both from her, so just go ahead and read it out. We didn't talk about it.
Those who can't attend as having a second-class experience. These are the kind of questions we're seeking to understand via #digital or digidisciples. And then she goes on to add, yes, maybe we need face-to-face, but that is a question of wisdom rather than technology. Those of us online who have a prayer group alike is, yes, I saw this and praying for you, not just I like the situation. Anyway, there's a question up at the beginning of that, Craig. Do we see those who can't attend as having a second-class experience?
Oh, no, not at all. And I mean, I think it's amazing our ability to, in a sense, reach out and over lines, like the ability to communicate the gospel to someone in Pakistan or Iran or China. It's never been greater, because the technology just kind of goes right over the great firewall of China and their ability to try to contain it. So the world of Brother Andrew, that kind of courage and Bible smuggling, it's a completely different era. The ability to get the message over lines is fantastic. But at the end of the day, after you get that message into these communities over these lines, people still, I think, ideally have a face-to-face fellowship. They have people that they can call upon who are nearby, who are neighbors, who are companions, as they might have physical needs, whether that's monetary, whether it's physical, emotional, a hug of encouragement. We can give a certain kind of hug via Facebook, but I still find that a physical hug probably exceeds that in its power.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to read it because I think, boy, Bex, you got to speak up. Bex, I'm going to unmute you, man. I'm sorry. Bex, say something here. You've been texting, but now speak.
That's because I'm sat in my PJs off sick from work.
I have to go visual, just go audio. Sorry. Oh no, did I put you on the spot? No, just go audio. We can hear you.
I'm just interested kind of in the debate, really, and thinking about. I just think about Tim Hutchings. I don't know how many of you've come across him. We've been having a real chat. Andrew Flynn, by the way, your face is up on camera for some reason. And when we've talked about kind of the importance of embodiment, and we talk about it quite a lot, and we tend to go around in circles, I think, quite often. And one of his points is that we quite often say God came to earth as a human being, and therefore face-to-face is therefore the priority. But he also says something like God also talked through a donkey, but that doesn't mean we should all speak through a donkey. I think that's roughly what he said. And then we've gone on to kind of conversations about the Holy Spirit and how much what we do online is a bit like the Holy Spirit. It's that kind of third, I'm just reading Heidi Campbell's Digital Religion. They talk quite a lot about the third space that's being created kind of by the internet. So it's more of a ramble than a question.
Well, by the way, that's I'll just mention this. This is from a professor. Are you still at the University of Winchester, Beck?
I'm at Durham University now.
Durham, sorry. Okay, anyway, from a fellow professor, one professor to another, Craig. You go, Craig.
Well, no, I would say yes. Thank you for that, and yeah, I've found Heidi Campbell's work on the subject very helpful, and I think it's very provocative to suggest that maybe the internet era is a little bit more of the era of the spirit. You know, it's slightly more ethereal. It's traveling over airwaves or sound waves, and can't quite be contained, just like the wind itself. It blows where it will. So I think it's great comment, Vex. Yeah.
I want to just interject here for the sake of the debate as well. I think that what comes to mind for me is the prince of the power of the air is also very present and very active in this world that we live in and the technology that we interface with and on. And I don't know that I would say there's necessarily an absolute better or best when it comes to communication. I think the Spirit is allowed, and it has the God is over all and through all and in all, and so He can use a human face-to-face interaction. He can use a donkey. He can use communication through the internet to get His point across and to minister. But I think the challenge for us comes as individuals, as Christians, as fallen human beings, that just in simple things like culture and sensitivities, and yes, you can communicate with somebody in Cambodia, but just because I'm allowed to communicate with a person in Cambodia doesn't mean that I'm going to understand that person any better. I mean, it allows for that communication, but the challenges of cultural sensitivities and things like that come into play at those points, as well as just understand. I mean, there's tons of inferences that you can go out there too, but I sort of pitch into the argument, debate that as much as we have the opportunity to use it, the enemy against us has mastered it, and while we may, well, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thoughts, questions, cries of outrage.
Greg, you get the parting shot, and then maybe we'll go back to you, Benjamin, just to kind of wrap us up.
Wrap it up.
I guess my reasons for writing the book are simply that I found us far too many Christians have sort of uncritically embraced the smartphone without really pausing long enough to think about what you're bringing into your life. Is it making you a better person? What are the softwares that we incorporate? What are the apps that we incorporate? What are the values inherent in them? There's plenty of good, but there's also plenty that we're not even recognizing or thinking about. And so I guess I feel like as the Reformation that came from the introduction of the printing press, we're in the midst of a new, complete, different kind of Reformation. Mm-hmm. And we need to be much more thoughtful and theological about how we approach these digital devices.
That is an excellent summary. Thank
you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. It's been a privilege to sit and to listen to you and to interact with you and to meet you. Thank you for your time, and we all appreciate that. Yes, everybody, go check out Craig's book, iGods. I mean, you have a number of books, I believe. But
don't worry about that. One's enough.
Well, at least check out iGods, and it's on Amazon. You can order it online. We want to just mention that we do have another webinar. Our next webinar is coming up in July on the 15th. It'll be the same time, same place. We'll be sending out an invitation and a registration and link to that as well. It will be on why your organization needs a mobile strategy. And there'll be more information on that to come. Again, that's July 15th at 9 Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. And this whole session has been recorded and will be available on the MMF website for you to go back and review and share with others. We encourage you to do that. We will have all of the information, the slideshow and the video and all of that stuff available for you to recap. We're getting a few more chats that have come in. So let everybody take a look at that. And Clyde, would you just close us in a word of prayer?
I will. I'll mention two things that come to mind. One, this has been sponsored by the Mobile Ministry Forum, which is this coalition of like Benjamin, Clyde, and lots of others around the world who are trying to figure out, in particular, how the mobile device, platform, the tablets and the phones affect our lives, but also offer opportunities for ministry. So we offer an online course. The next session, it is a 6-week course. The next session will begin on July the 8th. It's just an online course. So we will recommend that and make sure you have information regarding that. Here, I'm going to put the URL in. I think this is correct. So that will take you to the information about the course. Benjamin mentioned the upcoming webinar, and then there was one more thing. Oh, our next event. The dates have not yet been announced, but our next event will most likely be on the, sorry, I'm distracted, will be in Europe. We've been meeting in Orlando the last couple of years, but we're probably going to jump to Europe next year. So Andrew and Bex and others will make it a little bit easier for you to attend. Most likely in Holland in the month of March, and it will be kind of consecutive or just right after the Eurasia Media Distribution Consultation. So anyway, let me give thanks. Jesus, we worship you. You're kind, you're good, you're God. You are the carpenter. You're the technon, I think was the Greek word. God, you are the author of technology, and we want to use it for good, for your honor, for the good of the nation. I just pray we'd all be discerning. I think that's the great challenge from Craig, is to help us to just consider the things that we bring into our lives and to evaluate their impact, good and bad. So bless the people here and those who will hear later. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Go in God, everyone. Be blessed.